You don't live here anymore. Dad, this house belongs to us now. Hey dates. Those words hit me before I even crossed the threshold. I froze on the porch, gripping the railing, wondering if I had misheard. But no. My only son stood in the doorway, his arm draped around his wife, both blocking my way. How could a child I raised with my own hands suddenly declare me a stranger in my own home? Behind them, I caught a glimpse of people I barely knew, her parents, moving freely through my kitchen, opening cabinets, laughing as if they had owned the place for years. The smell of fresh coffee drifted out, carried on a breeze that once brought the scent of my wife's Sunday roast. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling more from disbelief than anger. Do you hear yourself? This cottage is mine. I bought every plank, every nail, every window. Your mother and I poured our lives into these walls. No, then. He didn't flinch. His wife, Marissa, tightened her hold on his arm, her eyes sharp with triumph. We already told you, she said coldly. It's better this way. You don't need a place this big. And my parents deserve comfort in their retirement. No, then. Her words sliced me open. Comfort for them meant erasing everything I had built. Every memory with the woman I buried 3 years ago. I looked down at the welcome mat. My wife once insisted on buying faded now, but still there. And I asked myself, what kind of father gets cast out like an intruder by his own blood? I wanted to push past them, to reclaim what was mine. But my knees buckled under the weight of betrayal. My son's expression told me he had already chosen his side. Not mine. Never mine again. Go home, Dad. Ethan muttered. Don't make this harder. My adbinity, home. The word burned. This was my home. And yet, as I stepped back onto the porch, I realized I had already been evicted without a court. Without papers, only by the cruelty of the voices I once loved most. The door shut. Their laughter filled the silence behind it. And for the first time in my 63 years, I felt like a ghost haunting a house that still carried my name. I drove away from the cottage with my chest hollow, the steering wheel trembling under my hands. The road that once brought peace now stretched like a scar across the New England coast. My mind reeled backward, desperate to hold on to memories that were slipping through my grasp. 35 years ago, I was a young man with dirt under my nails and nothing but a stubborn will. I worked construction crews in Boston during the day and hauled crates in the shipyard at night. Every dollar went into savings. Every bruise was just another reminder of why I refused to quit. I told myself that one day I would buy a place where my family could breathe fresh air, where the ocean wasn't just something seen from a distance, but something we could wake up to. When I met Claire, everything sharpened into purpose. She had a laugh that carried through rooms, a laugh I can still hear in echoes when I walk into an empty house. We married in a courthouse with barely enough for rings. But she never cared about things that glittered. What she wanted was a home where she could plant her roses, a kitchen where she could stir soups in a pot big enough to feed whoever showed up at the table. Years passed. I climbed from day laborer to foreman, then finally opened my own small contracting business. We saved every check, lived modestly, while others spent. It took us nearly 2 decades. But the day I signed the deed to that seaside cottage, Claire cried like a child. She walked through every room with her hands trailing across the walls, as though she was touching a dream. She painted the shutters herself, blue to match the ocean. She filled the shelves with books, lined the garden with marigolds. That house was never just wood and nails. It was her soul poured into brick and timber. Ethan was born into those walls. I remember holding him against my chest in the master bedroom, Claire exhausted but smiling, whispering, "This is where he belongs. This is where he'll always feel safe." I believed her. For years, the cottage was our anchor. Summers were filled with bonfires and long swims. Winters meant hot chocolate and the creak of the old fireplace. When storms hit, we huddled together, laughing at the wind rattling the shutters she loved so much. When cancer stole Claire, the cottage became even more sacred. It was where she had asked to take her last breath, her hand squeezing mine until she slipped away. I kept every detail exactly as she left it. Her quilt still spread across the bed, her gardening gloves still hanging by the porch. For me, stepping into that house was stepping back into the only place I ever truly belonged. I never thought Ethan would grow cold. As a boy, he begged me to tell him stories by the fire. He asked me to teach him how to patch the roof, how to paint the siding. I believed he loved that house as much as I did. Maybe I spoiled him. Maybe I mistook his silence after his mother's death as grief instead of distance. I bent. I gave. I paid his debts, his tuition, his first car. I kept thinking patience would bring him back to me. Now I see I was wrong. All those sacrifices had not built loyalty. They had built expectation. My kindness became his entitlement. And Claire's dream home, the place she had begged me never to let go, was now treated like a pawn in someone else's game. As the car carried me farther from the coast, I whispered into the empty air, "I failed you, Claire. I promised I'd protect what we built. I promised I'd protect him too." "Has mine did?" The silence answered me. Only the tires on the asphalt kept rhythm with the ache in my chest. The next morning I stood in my Boston kitchen with the phone in my hand and dialed anyway. The line clicked. My son answered. Too cheerful. "Hey, Dad. Busy morning. Can we make this quick, Ethan?" I said. "I'm coming back to the cottage this weekend. We need to talk there. Face to face." A pause. "You can't," he said. "We've made plans. Marissa's parents are settling in. They're measuring for curtains. It's basically their place now. Their place." "Who told you that?" "We did," Marissa said, suddenly on speaker, her voice cool as glass. "You barely go there, Tom. It sits empty while my parents live over a laundromat. They need quiet. You have your city apartment. Let's be practical. The house is mine," I said. "It was our dream. Your mother asked me to keep it safe. That was then," Marissa replied. "We live in the present. We're a family. What helps the most people matters. So I don't count," I said. "You're being dramatic, Dad," Ethan said. "We're not taking anything. We're reallocating. You can visit as long as you coordinate with us. You can't just show up. It confuses everyone. Coordinate with you. In my own house." He sighed. "We copied the spare key because the lock stuck. We had to call a locksmith anyway. We'll cover the cost. You copied my key without asking. We're family," he said. "Do we need permission for everything?" "Yes," I said. Marissa stepped in. "Your son is trying to solve a problem kindly. Please meet him halfway. My parents' lease ends in 2 weeks. They can't renew. You wouldn't want them on the street." "No one will be on the street," I said. "I'll help with a deposit somewhere else. But the cottage stays as it is." Silence. Then Ethan's voice. "Harder. That place is wasted on you. You go a few weekends a year and sit alone at a table set for 2. Mom is gone. Why cling to paint and rooms? Because she touched those walls," I said. "Because love has fingerprints." Marissa's laugh was short. "We all loved her, Tom. But love isn't a museum." Ethan spoke again. "Quick. Brittle. I've arranged deliveries. A bed. A sofa. They're using the master. We shifted your things to the side room. I'll send pictures. You moved our bed. It's just furniture. Dad, It is a promise, I said. It is where your mother closed her eyes. It is where you lay between us and swore we would never sell that house. People say a lot when they're 9, he said. I forced my voice steady. If I drive there today and put my key in the lock, will it still open? You shouldn't do that, he said. It'll make a scene. Don't embarrass yourself. I will not be embarrassed by standing in my own doorway. His tone shifted. Old defiance waking. If you come, we'll call the police. They'll say you're trespassing. Trespassing. On a deed with my name. We don't want that. He rushed on. But we have to protect stability. We're starting a family. You'll be a grandfather. Don't ruin this before it begins. Put me on with her parents, I said. Why? Because they plan to live in my home. And I want to hear them say it. A shuffle, then another voice. Pleasant and practiced. Hello, Tom. This is Joseph. We appreciate your generosity. We will take good care of the place. You will not take possession of anything I own, I said. You will not sleep in my wife's bed. You will not hang curtains over the windows she washed on Sundays. We are simple people, he said. We need quiet. We thought you were kind. Kindness without respect is a leash, I said. Give the phone back to my son. Ethan returned, bristling. You're making this ugly. You made it ugly when you chose them over blood. They're not strangers, he said. They're family now. Family asks, I said. Family does not break locks and redraw maps. Marissa came back, tired of the dance. Here is what will happen. We'll handle utilities. We'll maintain the garden. You will tell us before you visit. If you arrive unannounced, we will involve law enforcement. This arrangement is final. Final. I repeated. Who decided that? We did. Ethan said, then hear me. I said, no. The word sat between us like a stone. Dad, he warned. No, I said. There are lines we do not cross. You cross them. Step back. Silence. When he spoke again, his voice was low. If you keep fighting, we'll make this legal. We'll say you're slipping. We'll say the house is unsafe for you alone. Courts listen to that. You would paint me incompetent to take the last thing your mother loved. It's not taking if it's for the greater good, he said. Is that how you sleep at night? I asked, telling yourself that hurting me is good. This conversation is over. Marissa snapped. Do not come. Do not call until you're ready to be rational. Goodbye. Tom. The line clicked. I stood very still. Outside. The city kept moving as if nothing had changed. But everything had. A son had cut his father out of a life he once promised to share. A door had shut on a house with blue shutters. I set the phone down and felt the room tilt. The kettle clicked off by itself. A small mercy. And I realized my hands were shaking. A quiet word formed in my mouth again. Heavier this time. No. That night, I did not turn on the lights. I sat in the dark kitchen and listened to the city breathe. The fridge hummed. I held Claire's wedding band in my palm until the skin went white around it. I had promised to keep our home safe. I had promised to keep our son safe. Both vows felt cracked in my mouth. The phone lay on the table. Its black screen showed my own face in the window behind me. I thought about calling Ethan again. I did not. Every word from the last call still scraped inside my chest. Trespassing. Reallocating. Coordinate. I wondered when my son learned to speak like that. Not from Claire. Not from me. Maybe from grief that hardened. I made tea, because Claire used to say that boiling water settles a storm. The kettle clicked once and went still. Steam fogged the glass where her ivy plant used to sit. I had moved it to the cottage after her funeral. I wanted something living to watch the light on the water. I pictured the plant there now. Leaves reaching. The image made my throat close. I poured the tea down the sink and held the counter until the shaking stopped. Sleep would not come. I walked the apartment and touched the backs of chairs and the tops of doors. I opened the closet where Claire kept winter coats that still carried a trace of her soap. I stood with my face in the wool and breathed until memory flooded and then ebbed. We had built a life from nothing. We had taught a boy to ride a bike in a parking lot behind a church. He had fallen, then said he would try again. When did he stop trying with me? Near midnight, I took out the box where I keep letters. Claire wrote to me on the first day I met her. She said I made her feel less alone in a loud world. I ran my finger along her name. I tried to hear her voice saying my own. I heard it at the cottage when the sea pushed against the shore. That sound made her laugh. She said God speaks where the waves slide back and stones rasp together. I had believed her. I still did. Grief is a season you cannot schedule. Some days it hides. Some days it bars the doorway. Tonight it stood there with my son's face. He was 9 again in my mind. He had freckles from the sun. He had glued shells to a picture frame for Claire's birthday. He had whispered that he would keep the cottage forever. Children make promises like prayers. Adults pick them apart with clever hands. I asked the ceiling a small question. What did I do wrong? I gave too much. I gave too fast. I thought love would teach gratitude by itself. Maybe love without edges only teaches hunger. Maybe I trained my son to believe I would always bend. The thought made me cold. It also made me honest. Kindness is not a fence. It is a gate that must still lock at night. I sat back down and put the ring on the table. I spoke aloud so the words could not hide. Claire, I failed you. I let our boy drift into a shallow current. I let strangers draw maps over our life. I kept quiet when I should have named the harm. I kept hoping the tide would turn. It did not. It dragged us farther out. I am tired of pretending the water is warm. I picked up a pen and started a letter to Ethan. The first line said, I love you. The second said, this is not love. I wrote that love does not cut locks and move beds in the night. I wrote that love does not call a father a trespasser. I wrote that I would help him. But I would not trade my wife's last room for his comfort. I wrote that I was done asking permission to breathe in a house I paid for with my back and my blood. Tears smeared the ink. I left the page open to dry. Dawn thinned the dark. The city woke in small steps. I put on my boots because I did not trust myself to sit still. I walked until the river came into view. Cold air cut my lungs. I stood on the bridge and watched water tug at the pylons. It never stops. It never asks. It knows where it is going. I leaned on the rail and spoke to the current. You and I will keep moving. Not out of anger. Out of truth. I will not let grief turn me cruel. I will not let fear turn me small. But I will not be erased. I will not live as a guest in my own life. The water carried the vow away. It felt like a kind of answer. When I returned home, the light in the kitchen was soft and new. The ring shone on the table. The letter to Ethan had dried in thin rivers. On the counter stood a small frame with Claire in a yellow raincoat. She was laughing at nothing at all. I set the frame upright and wiped a line of dust from the glass. I asked them for counsel the way a child asks the night for quiet. I told her I had waited too long to grow a spine. I told her I had tried to buy peace and only purchased silence. The apartment held the words and did not argue. The chair across from me stayed empty. I folded the letter with care. I slid it into an envelope and wrote his name slowly. My hands were steady now. The ache remained. So did the line I had spoken in the dark. No, it did not feel like rage anymore. It felt like respect. It felt like a boundary I should have set years ago. By sunrise, the word no had legs. It wanted work. I showered, shaved, packed the deed. tax bills, and the last utility statement. Claire's ring went in my pocket. Then I dialed a number I had not used since the funeral. Nora Patel answered on the second ring. She handled probate when Claire passed. Steady eyes, a voice that never rushed. I said my name. I said I needed help to protect a house by the sea. Come in at 10, she said. Bring everything. Her office sat above a bakery on Tremont. I climbed one flight. Nora opened her glass door before I could knock. Tom, she said. Sit. Tell me what has happened. I told her. Simple words. My son copied keys. His wife moved my bed. Her parents planned to take the master. They threaten police if I come home. He said court. He said I am slipping. He said I should coordinate to visit my own kitchen. Nora wrote in a clean hand that never wobbled. You have the deed, she said. I put it on her desk. She read the names, then looked up. You hold title alone. No transfer, no lien, no trust. No one can put you out without a judge. She tapped the page. Keep this close. We take steps today. What steps? I asked. First, document everything. Dates, messages, threats, screenshots. Second, change access. New locks, new codes, alarm with logs. Post a notice that entry without permission is trespass. Photograph it. If they remove it, photograph that. Third, send a letter. Calm, firm. State that you are the sole owner, that entry without consent is unlawful, and that any attempt will be referred to council. I will draft it. You will sign. My throat eased for the first time in days. What about their claim I am unsafe to live alone? If anyone files for guardianship on false grounds, we respond. Nora said. Capacity evaluation by your doctor. Business records. Your arrival on time with documents in order. The court does not strip a man of his house because he grieves. You are grieving. You are not confused. Nora slid a legal pad toward me. Start a list. Everything they have said. Every penny you have paid since Claire died. We will not fight mean. We will fight clean. I wrote until lines blurred. Tuition. Down payment on his car. Medical bill. Rent after college. Credit cards. I added copied key and circled it. Nora reviewed each page like a builder checking studs. Good, she said. Bring bank statements. We will package this so a judge understands. Pattern matters. She printed a draft and read it aloud. Not angry. Steel. It told Ethan and Marissa and their parents that entry was revoked. That items moved without permission must be returned. That all future visits required written consent. And that all communication should go through counsel. It ended with one sentence that steadied my hands. The home of Claire and Tom Reeves remains the home of Tom Reeves. I signed. She notarized. She sent the letter by email and certified mail while I watched. There is one more choice. Nora said, you can place the cottage in a trust with you as life beneficiary, or donate it to a foundation with a life use clause. If you fear future pressure. This ends it. Donate. I said. Claire raised money for a shelter near the harbor. If the house ever leaves me, it should go where her hands already went. You do not need to decide today. Nora said. Decide after you breathe. For now, secure your door. Tell the truth in writing. Build a file. Do not go there alone tonight. Wait one day. Bring a locksmith in the morning. Bring a witness. I left with copies in a clean envelope. Outside, the bakery handed me a warm loaf. On the sidewalk, I tore a piece and ate it plain. At home, I opened the midnight letter I wrote to Ethan. I did not send it. Nora's note was enough. Instead, I typed one line. Son, I love you, but I will not be erased. Then I watched the certified proof arrive. The rest of the day I made calls. A locksmith named Wyatt would meet me at 8. A security company would install cameras with cloud logs by noon. My doctor would see me Friday for a capacity statement. My neighbor on the Cape, June, picked up on the first ring. She said she would walk by at dusk and text a photo of whoever came or went. Evening came with outrage. I set Claire's ring on the windowsill where the light could find it. I laid the deed and Nora's letter beside it. I set my boots by the door. I flipped my phone face down. I was done standing in the dark and asking the ceiling what to do. The answer had moved into my bones. Tomorrow, I would go to the sea with a locksmith and a witness. Tomorrow, the key that opened the door would be mine again. Not because I begged. Because I owned it. Because love is not weak when it says no. Because a house can grieve and still stand. Morning came sharp and clear. I drove east with Wyatt, the locksmith, following behind in his van. The closer we drew to the Cape, the harder my pulse beat. Every pine tree, every bend in the narrow road held memory. Claire laughing with her hair tangled in salt wind. Ethan chasing gulls until he tripped and cried. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Today was not for remembering only. Today was for taking back. Wyatt was a sturdy man with calm eyes. When we reached the cottage, he studied the front door. The lock had no marks, but he nodded. Keys were copied here. He pulled out his kit. Within minutes, the cylinder was replaced. He set a new keypad above it, programmed to send a log each time the door opened. He handed me the code. You'll know if anyone tries. He showed me how to change it with 3 quick buttons. Next came the cameras. The security company sent 2 men. Brisk and professional, they mounted units at the corners, in the hallway, and one in the kitchen window. Everything streamed to my phone in real time. Each clip stored online. I tested it myself, stepping into the frame, watching my own tired face appear on the screen. Proof at last. No more words against words. I stood on the porch with June, the neighbor, as Wyatt packed up. She was younger than me but spoke with the authority of someone who knew storms. She promised to check the property each evening. Her husband was a retired officer. He would stop by too. You're not alone, she said. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Inside, I walked room to room. The master bedroom had been stripped. Sheets balled in a corner. A dresser drawer left half open. Anger rose, then steadied. I placed Claire's quilt back on the bed. I set her photograph on the nightstand. I whispered. I kept my promise. That afternoon, I spread papers across the dining table. Nora's letter, bank statements, lists of payments I had made for Ethan over the years. I stacked them by date. Tuition, car loan, apartment deposit, medical bills, credit cards. Every number, another piece of evidence. I highlighted phrases from texts. Coordinate visits, trespassing, reallocation. I printed photos June had sent last night. Marissa's parents, stepping across my porch with bags in hand. Proof, line by line. But evidence alone would not be enough. I needed something that would speak louder than threats. I thought of Claire again, her voice steady when storms shook the shutters. She had always said, plan 2 steps ahead. Never fight where they expect. That advice guided my work for years. It would guide me now. So I sketched a plan. Phase 1. Secure the cottage with locks, cameras, and notices. Phase 2. Deliver Nora's letter. Keep every response. Stay silent otherwise. Phase 3. Prepare an option to end the conflict. Permanently transfer of the house into a foundation, with my right to live here until I died. That would cut off every angle of pressure. No son. No court. No false claim could undo it. Still, another thought pressed at me. Words alone might not stop them. They had already ignored the law of family. They might ignore the law of property. I needed something stronger. Something that could not be erased by denial. I called an old friend, Aaron, a retired engineer who now lived inland. He owed me a favor from years back when I helped him rebuild after a fire. Aaron listened quietly, then said, "You need more than locks. You need presence. I'll bring equipment, motion sensors, lighting, alarms, nothing illegal. But they won't step foot inside without knowing they are being watched." 2 days later, his truck arrived. Together we wired the cottage with motion-activated floodlights, speakers that could play a warning, sensors in every room. He showed me the control panel, simple, clear, all of it tied to my phone. We tested it at dusk. As I crossed the threshold, the lights blazed. A voice declared, "Property of Tom Reeves. Leave immediately." The sound echoed against the sea. Aaron grinned. "Nobody sleeps through that." He patted my shoulder. "Remember, technology is only a tool. Your backbone is the real defense." That night I sat on the porch under a pale moon. Waves broke steady on the shore. The cottage hummed with new strength. For the first time since Claire died, I felt the weight shift. Not gone, but moving. I whispered her name. I told her I was not running anymore. I told her tomorrow, if Ethan and Marissa came with more demands, they would find not a grieving man, but a wall they could not climb. No more begging. No more silence. This house would stand. And so would I. They came on a Saturday noon. Sun bright. Confidence brighter. A silver SUV rolled up my drive. Doors swung open like a parade. My son walked ahead, his wife at his shoulder, her parents behind with a toolbox and a tape. They carried the air of people who believed the ground would rise to meet them. I met them on the porch. The new notice hung at eye level. Entry by permission only. Owner on site. Video recording in progress. "We are here to settle this," she said. "It is already settled." I said, "Did you read your email? We saw your lawyer note." My son said, "You did not need to escalate. We are family. Let us in. We will talk inside." "No." I said, "We will talk here. You return the key. Then we talk." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the brass. His fingers closed again. "Not yet. First, you need to be reasonable." Behind him, her father tried the handle. The keypad beeped and flashed red. He tugged again. Nothing moved. I raised my phone. The screen showed each camera in daylight. June crossed the lawn and stood at the fence. Her husband waved once. My hands felt steady for the first time in weeks. His wife stepped closer. "This controlling behavior is exactly why we had to take charge. You are turning into a man who cannot live alone. We are protecting you." "Protect me by stealing my bed," I said. "Protect me by calling the police on my key." My son looked to the water. "Stop making this cruel. We are here with a plan. My in-laws will take the master. We will use the guest room when we stay. You can come 2 weekends a month with notice. In return, we will handle everything. Bills, repairs, yard work. It is a cage," I said. "If you do not accept the plan, we will petition the court next week," she said. "We will present your grief. We will explain your isolation. A judge will not leave a vulnerable elder in a remote house. He is not vulnerable." June said from the fence, "This is family business." She snapped. "Not when you step onto a porch you do not own." June said. I tapped the phone. The porch lights brightened. The camera beeped. A calm, recorded voice sounded from the speaker above the door. "Property of Tom Reeves. Leave if you do not have permission. Her father flinched. My son's jaw tightened. She did not move. Scare tactics, she said. Documentation, I said. I opened the folder I carried. I placed 3 copies of Nora's letter on the rail. Certified notice. Revocation of consent. Demand for return of keys. All contact to counsel. My son stared at the pages and did not touch them. This is not how sons and fathers fix things. You chose the how, I said. He pressed the key into my palm. Fine. But we are not leaving. We packed for the weekend. We will sit on the deck and enjoy the view. You cannot stop us from being on a beach. You can sit on the public sand. I said. The deck is my line. Then we will go in, she said. She put a hand on the handle and the keypad flashed red again. Call whoever you want. We are done playing. I turned the system to active. The floodlights came up, though the sun still burned. The warning sounded again. Property of Tom Reeves. Leave immediately. Video recording in progress. Unlawful entry will be reported. My son stepped back. He looked at me. Then at June. Then at the camera. He set his suitcase down as if that made the house his. Her father lifted his tool bag. He moved toward the side door. I followed. The light above snapped on. The speaker repeated the warning. He kept going. Stop, I said. He kept going. June called that she was dialing the local station to report attempted unlawful entry. Her husband read the address into his phone. Calm as routine. He stopped then and turned. No words came. She tried a new angle. Tom, think of the baby. We are expecting. Do you want your grandchild to hear that you would not share a home you barely use? My throat clenched. Then the picture steadied. That child would learn what love means from what I did now. I set a smaller envelope on the rail. It held a copy of a draft I had signed that morning. It told them I was preparing a transfer of the cottage into a charitable trust with my life use protected. No one would inherit this house by bullying or pity. He read the first lines. His voice broke on the word trust. You would give away my home. It is not yours. I said. It is mine to protect. It is mine to choose. It is Claire's last room. It will not be a prize in a tug of war. You are choosing strangers over me, he said. I am choosing truth over threats. I said. Silence held. The sea kept its old rhythm. At last he picked up his suitcase. He took his wife's hand. We will be back with papers, he said. Bring truth. I said. Bring respect. He blinked. Then he walked to the SUV. Her father followed. The engine started. Tires crunched the shell drive. The porch went quiet. The warning voice went still. I stood with June until the road was empty. She put a hand on my shoulder. You held the line, she said. I looked at the blue shutters Claire had painted and felt the old house breathe. The first battle had ended. The war for my own name had begun. They came back before sunrise with a rented van and a man in a gray shirt carrying a drill case. Headlights washed over the porch. I watched the cameras from the kitchen. The phone warm in my palm. June texted that she was outside on her steps with coffee and a clear view of my gate. Ethan stepped out first. Marissa followed with a folder. Her parents climbed down slowly, as if entering a place that already belonged to them. The man with the drill opened his case and looked at my door like it was a job site. I walked to the porch and stood under the notice. Entry by permission only. Owner on site. Video recording in progress. The sea was a dull silver. Gulls cried as if arguing for me. We have a locksmith. Marissa said. He will install a new cylinder. It will be safer for everyone. You will not touch that door. I said. You received notice. You are here without consent. Her father took 2 steps and reached for the sign. I lifted my phone and took the photo as his fingers closed. He froze. then dropped his hand. The locksmith looked at me, at the camera above me, at June across the lawn. He cleared his throat. I need the owner's written request. He pointed to the sign. That is the owner. Without his consent, I do nothing. Marissa's mouth thinned. She turned to Ethan. Say something. You are his son. Ethan's voice shook. Dad. Stop being dramatic. We are trying to help. Let us in. We will work this out. Help by breaking what is not broken. I said. A cruiser turned onto the lane. June had called in the report she promised to call. 2 officers stepped out. Calm. Hands low. Eyes steady. Good morning. We received a call about a possible disturbance. Who is the owner? I handed over my identification and the deed copy Nora told me to keep ready. The older officer read it, then nodded. He asked the group for identification. He looked at the locksmith's open case. He looked at the sign. He kept his voice even. Sir, you cannot change a lock on a home you do not own. Ma'am, you cannot remove posted notice. This is a civil matter. But if you attempt entry, we will document and forward it. Marissa bristled. We have a right to care for him. He should not be alone out here. The officer turned to me. Do you want them trespassed today? I looked at my son. His face was pale. His eyes were the same blue as the day he learned to swim. Not today. I said, please record that I asked them to leave. Please document that they refused the first time. We will document, the officer said. He handed Ethan the certified letter I had emailed and mailed. He read the closing line aloud. The home of Claire and Tom Reeves remains the home of Tom Reeves. He looked back at me and then at them. My recommendation is that you leave now. If you return without consent, you may be cited. Do you understand? Her father folded. The locksmith closed his case. Ethan stood very still. Hands in his pockets like a boy who lost his map. At last he nodded. The van door slammed. The engine coughed. Stones rattled under the tires as they pulled away. The cruiser followed them down the lane. I went inside and cried in the hall where no one could hear it. It was not victory. It was the sound a rope makes when you cut it to stop a boat from dragging you under. 2 days later, a packet arrived by courier. Petition for temporary guardianship. Allegations of confusion and isolation. Requests for control of my finances. Hearing set for Friday. Nora read it and did not raise her voice. We will answer. We will bring truth. She called my doctor for the evaluation. She subpoenaed June. She pulled the video logs from the security account. The courthouse smelled of old wood and coffee. We sat at a small table while the clerk called the case. Ethan and Marissa sat on the other side with a young attorney who kept checking his watch. I wanted to walk over and take my son's hand. I stared at the grain of the table instead. The judge asked questions in a voice that could cut a fence. Nora stood and laid our papers in order. Deed. Notices. Certified receipts. The police report from the attempted entry. The doctor's letter that said I understood my affairs and could manage them. She called June to speak. June told the room exactly what she saw. From the copied keys to the van to the way I stood on the porch and did not shout. The judge watched the video of the locksmith visit. The sound was clear. Property of Tom Reeves. Leave immediately. The judge turned to Ethan. He asked why a son would file such a petition without a medical basis. He asked why a father who pays his bills and keeps his dates should be called confused. He asked why entry notices were torn down and beds moved without consent. He asked if they understood what elder abuse means in law. Marissa's attorney tried to steer the talk back to feelings. The judge lifted a hand. Feelings are not title. Feelings are not capacity. He denied the petition on the record. He entered an order that barred them from the property without written permission. He warned that further attempts could trigger sanctions. He assessed costs. The sound of his gavel felt like a door closing that should have closed months ago. Outside the courtroom, Ethan waited. He kept his eyes on the floor. When he spoke, the words were small. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought if I pushed hard enough you would let go. I did not expect you to fight me. I wanted to tell him I fought because I love him. I wanted to say I would have given him anything if he had only asked for less. What came out was simple. You have a child on the way. Do not teach that child that love is taking. Marissa pulled his sleeve. We are done here. She turned to me. You will regret this. I watched my son walk away with the person he chose. I stared at the hall where Claire once held his tiny hand and promised him that kindness matters. The hallway wavered. I stood still until it steadied. That evening I sat on the porch with the order on my lap. The sea was soft again. Gulls drifted toward the rocks. The house had survived a storm of paper and pride. The price was on both sides. They paid in public consequence. I paid in the private knowledge that a door inside my heart had shut, to stop the wind from tearing it off its hinges. I drove to the small cemetery that sits on the rise above the harbor. The wind carried salt and the sound of ropes knocking against masts. I parked by the gate and walked the gravel path with a paper bag of marigolds. Claire always said the bright ones looked like tiny suns. Her stone waited in the shade of a maple. I brushed off a few leaves and set the flowers at the base. I said her name and it left my mouth like a prayer. I told her what had happened since the last time I could stand here without shaking. I told her about the copied keys and the folded notices and the morning the judge put a voice to the truth. I told her I had not shouted. I had not begged. I had learned to say a word I should have learned sooner. I said I was sorry. Not the small sorry we trade when we bump elbows. The heavy one that settles in the bones. I said I was sorry I mistook endless giving for love. I was sorry I taught our boy that my door would swing no matter how he pushed. I was sorry I did not set the fence the night we brought him home and promised him safety. A fence is not a lack of love. It is a way to keep love from spilling out and washing everything away. I told her I had written lists for the lawyer. I told her how strange it felt to turn our years into lines on a page. The tuition and the car and the apartment and the cards. The roses she planted and the blue paint she chose and the ribs I overcooked the first summer. Numbers and memories do not belong on the same paper. Yet I had placed them there so a stranger in a robe could weigh them and decide who stood on the side of the line called right. I said, our son is going to be a father. The words broke me. The wind moved the maple leaves and made a sound like a soft answer. I told her I want to hold that child the way I held Ethan when he was new. I want to be a calm place where a small heart can sleep. I cannot be that place if I let the old harm come back through the door. I cannot be that place if I call surrender by another name. I asked for her counsel the way I did when a roof leaked or a client lied. She would smile and ask the only question that ever mattered. What is true? Not what hurts. Not what pleases. What is true? I stood with my palms on the cold top of the stone and listened. The gulls cried. A buoy bell sounded far out. Truth came quiet and clear. I did not break our family. I refused to let it be broken on my back again. I told her I wanted to forgive, not as a show, not as a quick trick to win some saintly prize. The kind that is slow and stubborn. The kind that can say, I will not let bitterness take the best room in my chest. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting the map of harm. It means I will not walk it every night until it becomes home. I said I would never turn the cottage into a weapon. I would not use a room to punish a son. I would keep that house as a shelter. A place where memory can breathe without fear. If the day comes when that child needs a quiet bed and a story and a mug of chocolate, I want the house to be ready. I will watch the door. I will guard the key. I will not let contempt cross the threshold again. But I will leave a light on for mercy. I told her about the trust. How the papers lay on Nora's desk. neat and exact. How the words say that no one will inherit that place by force. How the words say the cottage will pass one day to a shelter in the city that feeds the hungry and gives beds to women who have none. Claire's hands held bowls there when she was strong. Her laugh warmed that kitchen. The house would not die with me. It would go on, pouring out warmth. That thought loosened a knot behind my ribs. I slipped off my wedding band and set it on the stone. I let it sit in the sun until it warmed. I thought of the day she put it on me in that small room with the peeling paint and the cheap carpet, and the judge with the round glasses who forgot to smile. We laughed all the way down the courthouse steps. We had nothing but our names and a plan to make a home. We did it. The ring shone back at me. I put it on again. Some covenants do not end. They change their work. I pulled a folded letter from my pocket. I had written it before dawn. It said what my throat could not say to our son in person without breaking open. It said I loved him. It said I would help him find a place that fit his new life. It said I would not submit to arrangements that erased me or the woman he called Mom. It said I would be here, steady as a stone, ready to forgive when he could say the truth out loud. I placed the letter under a small rock by the flowers. It was not for the dead. It was for the living part of me that still hopes. I spoke to her once more. I told her I forgive myself for the years I mistook quiet for peace. I forgive the man who tried to buy harmony with favors and ended up bankrupt in spirit. I forgive the father who kept handing out fish and forgot to teach his son the boat and the net and the tide. I said the lesson is learned now. I will teach it with gentleness if I ever get the chance. The harbor bell rang again. A stain of light opened on the water. I thanked her for the years she gave me. I thanked her for the house with the blue shutters. I thanked her for the way she would tilt her head when I was stubborn and make me laugh until I was not. I told her I was going home, not to hide, to live. I walked back to the car with the sun on my face. The world looked the same. It was not. I had let go of a weight that did not belong to me. Grief was still there, but it sat beside me instead of on my chest. I started the engine and spoke to the empty seat. I will keep what we built. I will keep my heart open. I will keep my name. The next morning I went to Nora and said the words that had sat in my chest all night. I am ready. Place the cottage where no one can pry it loose. Keep my right to live there for life. Make it clean. Make it final. She nodded. There is a fit for your heart. The harbor table. A shelter and kitchen on Atlantic Avenue. Claire volunteered there. If you choose them, you keep life use. When you are gone, the deed funds their work. We drove to the city. The shelter was an old brick building that smelled of coffee and onions. A woman in a blue apron met us. She said her name was Mara. She remembered Claire ladling soup and laughing when it splashed. She walked us past a pantry, a room of small cribs, a hallway where a girl read to her brother. People moved with quiet purpose. The noise was gentle. The light was kind. In her office, I said what I wanted. The cottage will pass to the harbor table after my death. Until then, I live there and keep it in repair. I will pay the taxes. I asked for a small plaque in their kitchen. In memory of Claire Reeves. May every room feed the living. Mara set her palm on the papers and said they would honor the gift. Back at Nora's desk, we read each paragraph. She asked if I was sure. I thought of the porch and the judge and a 9-year-old boy with a frame of shells. I said yes. I signed. She notarized. Filings went out. She handed me a copy that felt like a key. Nora asked if I would tell Ethan. I said I would. I walked to the river and called from the bridge where the tugboats push against the slow water. He answered on the second ring. Are you ready to be reasonable? He said. I spoke plainly. The cottage is protected. I will live there. After me. It belongs to the harbor table. No one will inherit it. This ends the pressure. If you need help with a deposit for your own place, I will help. If you want to talk like a son, I will sit beside you, but I will not be erased again. Silence on the line. Then he said, "So you chose strangers over blood?" I said, "I chose truth over harm. I chose a future where our fights do not poison a house. I chose your mother's way." He swore and ended the call. I stood with the phone in my hand until my breath steadied. Then I walked back to Atlantic Avenue and put my name on the volunteer list. I could carry boxes. I could scrub a pot. My hands could learn new use. That afternoon I drove to the Cape. The shutters were blue. The cameras blinked green. I unlocked the door and said it out loud. "It is done." I took down the loudspeakers Aaron installed and left the simple alarms on. The control panel went in a drawer. I did not want to live with sirens. I wanted quiet that comes from safety, that does not shout. I stacked Aaron's gear to return. He told me to keep the floodlights. A little light keeps fools honest. In the kitchen, I washed the blue mugs and set them where Claire liked them. I opened the window and let the sea move through the room. For the first time since the funeral, I ate at the table without checking the door. Evening found me on the porch. The sky turned soft. A boy rode by on a bike with a squeak. He waved. I waved back. A gull landed on the post and waited as if for news. I laughed. And the sound felt like it belonged here. My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. "We will not forget what you did." Another from her mother. She wrote that my choice hurt them. She wrote they would find another place. She wrote that she hoped I would learn a softer road. I typed and deleted 2 replies, then sent one line. "I hope you find a safe home soon." I wrote a letter to my future grandchild. I said I did a hard thing, so gentle things could live. I said a house is not a prize. It is a promise. I said one day I would make pancakes in a kitchen that smells like soap and salt. I said the door will be open to kindness. It will close to contempt. I placed the letter in a drawer beside Claire's recipe cards. Night came. I returned the ring to my finger and locked the door with a code that only I knew. I left the window open to the tide. I slept without dreams of courtrooms or alarms. I slept as if the sea had taken the fear that had lived in my ribs and pushed it out where the wind could carry it away. Before sleep, I called June. I told her the papers were filed and that the house now wore a stronger skin. She laughed low and said she would bring over fresh bread in the morning. She said a home is safest when neighbors know your name. After the call, I stood in the hall and touched the doorframe that Claire painted. The paint was smooth under my fingers. I whispered thank you into the wood and felt the cottage answer with quiet breath. I sat at the table with a pad of paper and wrote the lessons the way I once drew plans for a roof. Straight lines. Clear marks. My handwriting shook, but the truth steadied it. First, love without boundaries is not love. It is surrender disguised as kindness. I had lived that mistake for years. I thought giving more would fill the gap after Claire died. I thought if I bent far enough, my son would see me and stay close. Instead, I taught him that my no was only a softer yes. Second, memory is not ownership. My son tried to claim the cottage because of weekends spent here. Because of summers when the walls echoed with his laughter. But a memory is not a deed. I carried memories of my father's house too, but I never called them mine. Memory is a gift we carry forward, not a tool to seize what belongs to another. Third, grief cannot excuse cruelty. I know Ethan hurt when his mother left this world. So did I. But grief does not excuse breaking locks, or handing my bed to strangers, or telling me I am confused when I am clear. Pain must be healed, not handed down like a chain. I set the pen down and spoke into the room as if Claire were across from me. The lesson is simple. Boundaries protect love. Without them, love rots into use. With them, love can grow even when tested. The cottage was quiet, but I felt her listening. I thought of the night I begged the ceiling for direction. I thought of the bridge where I spoke to the river. I had wanted answers written in fire. Instead, the answers came in plain words I could not ignore. Say no when no is true. Say yes when yes is free. I remembered the judge's voice in the courtroom. Feelings are not title. I remembered Ethan's eyes when he heard the order. He looked 9 again. Lost and small. My chest ached. I wanted to hold him. But I knew now I could not hold him by breaking myself. A father who lets his son learn cruelty teaches cruelty as a language. A father who says no teaches that love has edges that keep it whole. In the evening, I walked the shoreline and watched the gulls dive. The tide pulled hard, but the rocks did not move. I said it out loud so the wind would carry it. I am not a victim. I am not erased. I am not cruel for saying enough. Neighbors stopped me on the path. They had heard whispers of the court case. They shook my hand, clapped my back, left loaves of bread and jars of jam on my steps. One woman said, "You reminded us that elders still matter." Another said, "You showed us how to stand." Their kindness filled spaces I thought would stay empty. That night I built a small fire in the fireplace. I boiled water for tea the way Claire used to. I lifted the mug and said to the flames, "This is not an ending. This is a beginning." I did not win by punishing. I won by remembering who I am. The papers on the shelf made it official. The trust sealed the future. But the greater change lived inside. The man who walked into Nora's office trembling had walked out with a spine. The man who sat here now could face the sea without shame. I wrote one last note before bed. It was not for lawyers or judges. It was for Ethan, for the grandchild I might hold, for myself. It said, "A house can fall. A name can be twisted. But dignity is a wall no one can tear down unless you open the gate." I folded the note and placed it in Claire's recipe box. Someday, someone might find it between soup and bread. They might read it and understand why one man refused to be pushed out of his own life. The fire burned low. The house settled. I whispered the lesson again. Boundaries are not walls that keep love out. They are walls that keep love safe inside. Days settled into a rhythm that did not hurt. I woke when light touched the kitchen tiles. Brewed coffee in the blue mug Claire chose. Opened the back door. And let the air move through rooms we built with our hands. The house felt lighter, as if it had waited for me to stop apologizing for living here. On Thursdays, I worked at the shelter. I scrubbed pans until the steel shone and carried boxes up a stair that smelled like onions and soap. Mara showed me a drawing for a small wing. 8 beds for mothers and babies. She pointed to a square marked kitchen and smiled. "We will paint the cabinets blue." On the cape I kept the garden. Marigolds by the steps. Fresh paint on the rail where the salt had chewed the grain. June brought bread on Saturdays and told me about the boy down the lane who fixed his chain. The Easy Talk rebuilt something no court could touch. One evening, a plain envelope arrived. Ethan's handwriting. I made tea. Watched the sun slip behind the lighthouse. Then read. He wrote that he was sorry. Not for wanting everyone safe, but for the way he pushed, for the words he used, for letting other voices make him cruel. Fear had sat on his chest since his mother died and sounded like me leaving. Would I meet him? 2 days later, we sat in a diner with chipped plates. We spoke about weather and work and the baby. Then he set his hands flat on the table. "Dad, I was wrong. The words did not fix everything. They opened a door. I told him I loved him, not as leverage. I would help where help did not require me to disappear. We agreed to see a counselor together. He said yes. Weeks passed. We learned to speak without knives in our mouths. Marissa joined us once and cried in a way I had not seen. She said she had treated my home like a solution when it was a story she did not understand. I told her the door would open to kindness and close to contempt. She nodded and said she understood. The baby came in late autumn, a girl with a strong cry. At the hospital, Ethan placed her in my arms and whispered, "This is Claire." I cried without shame. I told her a no can be a kind of love that keeps the floor from giving way. Winter brought storms that rattled the windows. The house stood. So did I. On clear mornings, I walked the shore and counted what stayed. The gulls, the rocks, the line where sky meets water. That night by the fire, I wrote a note and slipped it into Claire's recipe box. If you are reading this, it means the house has done its work. It has kept you warm and told you the truth about love. It does not belong to you. It belongs with you. Carry it in the way you open your door and in the way you close it, when you must. I turned off the lamp and listened to the sea. Somewhere past the dark, a bell marked the channel. I lay down in the room that holds our vows and let sleep take me. Morning would come with soft light and gulls. I would brew coffee and step onto the porch and feel the quiet that comes when a man keeps his word.